Hello everyone and welcome to Shure Tech Talk. The topic of today is slightly different of past topics and have some guests, and we will try to investigate what can be the present and the future of our industry, event industry. We mean concerts, we mean conferences, trade shows. So the first question will be about what's happened, and the next one will be what's happening and what's going to happen in the future. To answer these very tricky questions, I have three guests. Stefan Weiland, who is an expert of the event industry in UAE, Mark Ross, project manager of Eclipse, and Antony Lovell, my colleague at Shure and representative of Shure Conference Network. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Welcome, everyone.
My first question for all the three of you, starting with Stefan, is how would you call what we are living in this moment?
Challenging times, optimistic times, pessimistic times. There is many words for a situation that no one of us or our parents or grandparents have actually gone through. So grandparents, they might have seen war or something, maybe from other people, their parents, they have seen war as well, but mostly our generation never really got caught in anything. So we had a very protected life, and getting hit by a disease that stops the world completely, prevents us from flying, prevents us from business, is a complete new thing that we all have to adapt and we have to learn. And I think that's the most important thing. We need to start learning and not just trying to run around like wild chickens and trying to find a way out. We need to learn. We need to learn how to behave. We need to make mistakes, because without mistakes we can't learn. So therefore, go out there, adapt, learn. That's what I could say. So that's why for us as manufacturers and distributors in the industry, it's a very tough and difficult time, because literally we don't have any clients anymore. Our clients have changed a lot. So if I basically also compare a little bit against the company that I work for, Adamson, that is you as Shure, you have a little bit of a third stream. That's the retail stream, where you basically you must see an uptick in sales of like broadcasting kits and vlogging kits, etc. So you can adapt. The thing is, for us as a manufacturer of live PA, that's a difficult thing, because we cannot make our PA smaller and hang it in someone's living room. So that's not going to happen. So we also built, or actually pulled forward, our whole install series that was supposed to come out in the next 2 years. So we basically put all our resources into the development of the install series of Adamson, and we've done it. So basically, we have done all the work that was planned for 4 years for 2 years and 4 months. So in Infocom, we have presented new products. So there is, you can see, if you adapt and if you change your approach, there's a possibility come out with a bit of not a win yet, but with a change to your own organization.
I agree with you, and I'm happy that you highlighted both sides of a story. I heard too many times, so this is an opportunity, this is a great moment to live. Yes, it is, as much as it is a very challenging moment. You mentioned we are both from a manufacturing side, and I think we are still somehow in a lucky position. For someone else, and I'm thinking about freelancer, technicians, directors, production managers, the stop of events meant an immediate stop at their daily cash flow. And this left some of us behind. Maybe Mark, you can tell us something more about the the initiatives that have been taken to self-support the event industry people?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, I think the initial response within the industry was absolute shell shock. I don't think anyone in their wildest dreams could have imagined what scale it would be on. The fact that it started off so localized from country to country and then suddenly became a worldwide issue so quickly meant that it's very, very difficult to predict not only what was going on on a day-to-day basis, but I mean, especially in the early weeks and months, it was very difficult to even work out what was coming up the next week, let alone what was going to happen in the next few months. And then obviously, unfortunately, due to this, there's a lot of people who within our industry have been affected. I mean, I've seen percentages at times or whatever, 70 or 80% or whatever of our industry who have either been put on to prolonged periods of unpaid leave or have been asked to being made redundant or are looking at alternative options in terms of employment. And actually a colleague came to me a little while ago and he was able to support and be able to give some help to a number of his friends and colleagues from the AV industry that were finding it quite difficult.
Just one thing, I think your microphone is a little noisy. Maybe you can fix it.
Let me have a look. Let me switch eyes. Is this better?
Yeah, much better.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. So I think the colleague came to me and we discussed that looking at supporting and helping people who were within the AV industry that had come to him and said that he'd had difficulties, especially financially. As we stepped back and looked at the bigger picture, we suddenly realized that actually this problem is on a much, much larger scale than we realized, which meant that we kind of looked at the initiative on an AV stroke events world basis rather than kind of company central. And it was at this point that we realized that obviously that the numbers were quite high, and in fact, very, very high. So what we realized is that we were in a very good position to be able to support these guys and to give them help. A lot of them are having trouble with repatriation or having trouble knowing whether to go home or not to go home, depending on their contract situations and things. So we set up an initiative just to be there to support them, really, the guys that are in financial problems, and be able to put some nutritional food on the table, let's say, on a kind of weekly basis where they haven't necessarily been able to afford to previously. So yeah, that's where the background of it came from. It's been really positive. The support we've had within the events industry as a whole. I mean, that's production companies and suppliers, and right across the board, the interest and the support has been amazing. And I think there's a real understanding within the events industry, especially in Dubai, because it's such a close-knit community, that the people who are struggling at the moment are the people who pull the 16-hour, 24-hour, 32-hour shift to make sure that some of these events that are really difficult can actually happen without really too much complaint, without too much problem. And actually, we're now in a position where we can kind of go to those guys and go, look, we're here to support you. Thank you for what you've done in these periods where we've been ridiculously busy. It's now for us to kind of give something back to you. And I think one of the important things is not just being able to support them, but in terms of a mental health thing, like letting them know that people that they consider higher up in the industry are concerned about them. I think that's a big lift for them morally, or that their morale is lifted, knowing that people care, essentially.
And I think this is a very important part of this initiative, moral support. Even though the best influence in terms of moral and strength and courage would come and is coming from seeing that something is starting to move again. And we've seen different things. One of them is related to not really virtual events. We'll get there later. More working from home arrangement for some of the professional in the industry. Antony, do you want to share some of the things you know and you have been involved in?
Thank you. If you're asking me how much fun am I having working from home, then it's going to be a very short, rude answer. First, I'm glad you started with both Stefan and Mark. Admirable effort that Mark and the team there are putting together, supporting colleagues in the industry. It's very much needed, and it's great to see. Stefan's point about we're adapting. Yes, as another manufacturer, we're doing exactly the same thing. You've got certain lines of equipment that you think are going to be used in one way, and suddenly out the blue, there's either a great opportunity or what you thought was going to be fantastic is never going to happen, at least for another year or so. So I like your word adaption. It's so much better than the word that was used on an Informer webinar last week, the dreaded word pivot that we all keep hearing. We must pivot, pivot, pivot. Pivot just seems to be another word for swivel when I was younger, and it generally had rude connotations. So yeah, look, everything is changing, and I think we're talking about events in general, and as you've already said, Andrea, there's very different things. There's the concerts, there's the sports events, there's the conferences, the exhibitions, and they're all affected in the short term in the same way. Nothing happened. Slowly, they're all going to come back, but I think they're all going to come back at a very different pace. Yes, working from home was a solution. I mean, my wife made me go to IKEA and buy a load of shelves, so I didn't have to have a load of Pelican cases with equipment everywhere, so it now looks like a conference shop behind me. I'm sure she'll have that down as soon as she can, and I can get back to the office properly. And life carried on. Last year, I think I was traveling 32 weeks of the year, dealing with conference systems around the world. Google Timelines kindly sent me a little reminder last week. I think the furthest I've gone in the last 2 months is to Spinneys. So, it's a very different scenario, and we have to get on with it. The initial shock, I think, was almost the whole, let's just hope this is all over in a month and then we'll get on with it, and hope there'll be a couple of months of work before the traditional summer lull here. And as it started sort of growing out a bit longer, we also went, okay, and took it a bit more seriously. And, having done all the courses online and certifications, we had to start looking at, okay, how do we start getting in contact with people, hence the webinars and so on and so forth. And look, everyone now wants to get back to it. I think the conference world will probably get back quicker because it's more manageable. Going back to the point of what we discussed briefly before this conversation started, it's down to the venues are a bit more controlled in a boring conference as opposed to a concert where you've got the crowds jostling together, and that's part of the experience. So it's an ongoing process, and I know you're going to touch upon later on is where we are now is probably not where we want to be, and will it ever go back to how it was? So that's the thing we're going to discuss. Whether we ever get the answers, I don't think we expect to, but at least we're having that conversation.
Not long ago, I had the opportunity to read the post on LinkedIn by Stefan talking about virtual events. And I'd really like you to say your opinion again, and to see also if these weeks in between changed it or it's still consistent. So what's your opinion on the possibility to have virtual events?
For the future, I will call them hybrid events. It is very difficult to say that's the new normal or something like this. This is a term I actually never use. The future normal is a little bit different thing, a little bit more optimistic stuff. Virtual events doesn't transport the live factor. There is zero emotion in virtual events. I can tell you right now, if you would have called the events industry into a Shure Tech Talk, into the Shure meeting room in GLT, there wouldn't be 22 people. And I can tell you why. Because people don't go to like this kind of talks or whatsoever, especially tech talks. They want to attend online. and it's absolutely okay for them and for me as well. So otherwise I wouldn't be here. But if I'm going, and I'm not, or me or Mark or Andrea, so we're not going to put our guitars out and start playing guitar suddenly, because then you will see the attendance rate is going to drop. And why is the attendance rate going to go drop? Because people find it boring. There's no emotions being transported. The same thing for virtual exhibitions. I have extended a virtual exhibition that was Infocom, and that was last week. And Infocom virtual, or Infocom Connect, as it was called, was just a big group, or basically many Zoom rooms that you can switch in between. And it's like, so, well, I don't know really where I am, and then someone is talking, and you really can't direct proper business relationship with anyone. There is no way to talk to people in a one-to-one way. It's like if I am at ISE in Amsterdam, I grab someone. I grab the guy, understand, tie him onto the desk, or I grab him and go with him into a bar or restaurant or something, and I have him for me. It's the same as you bring people on a boat. I think I always said the best location for a business event is a yacht or a boat. You put 20 or 40 people on a boat, they cannot leave. You know, you always have a chance to get someone, unless they're gonna lock themselves into the toilet. So in virtual events, you have no control about what people are taking from the event. And so that's for me. Emotions, not gonna happening. Connection, not gonna happening. So people will very, very quickly realize for certain applications, it's exactly the right thing. What we are doing right now wouldn't happen a year ago or 2 years ago. But now it's the right thing, and this will continue. We will have Shure Tech Talks next year and the year after, and we will have people attending this talks because it's interesting. People putting effort into it, and people are interested in to see what's going on and how we are developing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's an odd time. We are having to learn to adapt in a very, very quick way, and I think that people can very often they can react too quickly to things. I think, like Stefan said, I think that this phrase that's being banged about, which is the new normal, I think is not necessarily what it's going to be. I think we need to realize that because we're human, and the way that humanity works, we will progress eventually back to the norm. How that progression happens and how long that progression happens is very dependent on medicine and transport, flights, all these kind of things. I think in terms of integrating virtual events, I think one of the biggest problems you've got is, I'm sure there's a few people here who have been trying to do online teaching with their kids. And I think you find that it's a very similar situation, is that to grasp somebody's attention for a period, when you go and put them into a hotel room on a conference, and you've got breakout rooms, and you have a lunch set at a certain time, and you have a coffee set at a certain time, and whatever else, and then you have that integration between people who are sharing knowledge face to face, who are sharing business ideas face to face. That is what a conference is. That is how a conference works. So many people go, barely listen to what's going on during the conference, and then leave it till the lunchtime, the coffee time, or whatever to work with each other. So in terms of this, I think the virtual side of things is a really interesting concept. I think in the short term, where things like flights are going to be very difficult, maybe very expensive in terms of getting from America to here or wherever else it might be, I think it's something that we will integrate a lot more into the conference world. I think there will be virtual seminars, which will be then put to a room of maybe 200 to 1,000 people, whatever it might be at whatever time we get to that part of the process. But in terms of virtual events being the new norm, it just doesn't work. As humans, we can't adapt to that. We can't sit in front of a screen and then not feed the dog because the dog's barking at the window, or go and make the dinner for the kids because the kids are coming in, or whatever else it might be. Like to keep people's attention span on that screen is a totally different thing. And I think the interaction of people is why these events work in the first place. It's not because they necessarily are there for certain items of it. It's because as humans, we talk to each other and we communicate to each other. And that is the only way that the industry will carry on. And whether that goes back to the norm in a year's time or 2 years' time, I think we need to look at working out what the new norm is and the future is in terms of staggering it. I think that things will change for the next 6 months, which will then be phased out, which will then change for the next 12 months, which will then be phased out. And then maybe we get to 16 months down the line, 18 months down the line, and we have relatively back to normal.
My opinion is that we won't go back to normal. We will go forward to normal, meaning that history doesn't really go back much, and we'll see an evolution. And each one of you, starting from Antony, I think can recognize at least one element that is born in these challenging times, but it's also a valuable lesson and something we can keep in the future. So we learned this thing during COVID, and this is now part of our business, and it's a good side of it. It's something we can learn. Now I know it's very difficult to foresee it today when still we don't have a timeline. We don't know. We can talk about 6, 12, 18 months, but technically we have no clue about what's going to be the timeline. We see travel restrictions that here and there are being eased a little bit, but again, I don't know what's the percentage of flights from Dubai now happening and how many of them will happen starting July, but I guess it's around 10%, being optimistic. So it's very difficult now to think, okay, but this element that I'm seeing now will be valid in 1 or 2 or 10 years from now. But I think I ask you to risk a little bit and try to focus on one element that is actually adding value to what we are doing. Starting with Antony, who's focusing on conferences and probably will be the first one to start again.
So I got off easily with you starting with them on the first round, and now I get it, so thank you. Remind me never to get on a yacht with Stefan, just full stop, wherever we are in these things, in case I get locked in a toilet and sold to, apparently. Yeah, look, we do, Mark's comment, we need that human interaction. That's why we go to events. I agree, having worked from organising exhibitions and conferences and then supplying to them for many years, when in the industry, and now working with partners, SCN, our conference network partners, working on these things, or to parliaments themselves or permanent installations. It's the stuff that happens not on the main floor that is the important stuff, as you say. It's the networking, it's the conversations, and so on, and that's what makes it more of a human feeling. And yes, we all want to go back to that, but I think it was quite early in this whole COVID scenario, and I can't remember the name who said it, unfortunately, but they said this is effective. We've just gone through effectively the largest enforced experiment in working from home before that was even a term. Or I always remember here in the Gulf, you listen to the radio in the mornings or whatever, the business programs, they always say remote working or flexi working will never work in the Middle East. It's just not in the culture. And you know what? I think that people here in this part of the world, and also all around the world, in government, is sometimes the most inflexible people in the world. They've had to do it, and it's not been a complete disaster. It's been pretty nasty, 100%, but life could go on, and they found ways to get on with it. So I think you're right. Stefan's term earlier, the hybrid event, is something that we're going to see for a while, and hopefully it will start getting more and more back to where we were, but there will always be that slightly different elements. If I look at, it's a permanent installation, it's not an event, but it's the same idea. Parliaments, they've had to do this now, and now suddenly they're more open to the idea that, I don't know, a female member of parliament who's on long-term maternity leave doesn't need to physically be in the chamber where they always had to be previously, because all these governments around the world have had to open up and expand their, or loosen, if you like, their regulations. And now, yes, some of them are locking back down. And if you look at the Parliament in the UK, they've had them all queuing around the block for 4 hours to make a vote, and they're not happy. But we get a few things wrong in the UK Parliament at the moment. But it is going to go back. But I think there will be that more flexibility built in, and I think that's going to happen in both permanent installations and also events. There's always going to be a what if scenario, because let's be honest, the whole world got caught on the hop with this one. And so for any big event that happens from now on, more conferences, I agree, than necessarily concerts and so on at the moment, there always has to be that contingency built in. And I think we're going to start getting asked for that when pitching for these big events. So let's say it's a big multinational event happening somewhere. There'll be if this can't happen because suddenly something kicks in, what is the backup? And I think that's going to start then dragging out into other things, exhibitions themselves. How are they going to operate? They thrive on massive crowds. So is it then going to be this combination of X number of people on site in situ and others logging in remotely? And sometimes companies might look at that and unfortunately go, you know what, there's some savings on flights, on hotels, and all the other expenses, and so on and so forth. As I was saying to Stefan just before we started this call, I think the last event I went to was ISE, like him, in Amsterdam. Quite possibly the next exhibition that Shure will take part in a big, big way is ISE in Barcelona next February. And we normally do 30 plus exhibitions a year. So, it's affecting everybody, how we operate. So, no, I don't have the answers, Andrea, but I know it's going to be an ongoing journey. Let's put it that way. How's that?
Out of what you said, I would say that we will add flexibility in the way we have to think, and I think this is an interesting topic. Before the next question, we are hoping to receive questions also from the attendees on the different platforms. We already received a couple of questions, and one I think was pretty much already answered. So do you think there will be a reduction in live conferences in the future? Definitely in the short-term future, but maybe we will see it. We'll see more a change than a reduction in the long term. And I keep the other question for later. But for who's attending, if you have more questions, feel free to ask in on the different ways and method. Please, Stefan.
Andrea, can I just quickly pitch in? Yes. So to Rajan's question about the reduction in live conferences, to be honest, I don't see a reduction in live conferences. I don't even see an uptick on live conferences. Why? Because like the mass conferences, the conventions, they will be going into a reduced mode. So that means if there is less attendance, they need to do more. Very easy, because there is people who wants to go to the live conference. However, what I will see, or what we will see, is because of the technology that we are having now, and we're all using it right now, the amount of speakers that you will see around the world, they will not travel anymore. Everyone is basically having their home studio and will be directly linked into the conference and will speak with panel discussions, etc., live from home. This saves also the conference organizers a lot of money. A speaker usually flies business class or first class, stays for 3, 4, 5 days, or has a different, very, very challenging routing that's become very expensive. So bringing in a standard speaker costs you about, let me say, $5,000 to $6,000 that the guy takes in his pocket. Then you pay for a good hotel. You pay business class flights from one point to another. That's around $15,000. So only the side costs for a speaker in a conference is about $15,000 to $20,000. And this is suddenly what the conference organizers are saving. And that's a good thing, because they can actually put this in more and smaller and more bespoke conferences rather than doing like the mass conferences.
Mark, do you see the technicians? Do you see the can we call them the people who's really working, benefiting out of it. So more technology means more people to run the technology, and more, even smaller conferences can at the end of this mean more people that requires to be physically there to set up, to address, eventually also to in a new way, in a different way, so keeping social distancing and whatever. But how do you see this this potential to develop for who's really realizing the event themselves? I think you're muted, Mark. Yeah.
Sorry, the cat was going mad, so I've just got rid of it. I think the key to any of this is, especially within the technician's realm, is adaptability. I think there has been a huge wave of new technologies that have been brought, their releases, and have been brought forward to be able to deal with what's going on at the moment. People are releasing apps earlier than they were planning on doing, that give opportunity for people to offer live events over these different platforms, to bring people in from other parts of the world into a bigger screen towards a larger live audience. I think that in terms of technicians, I think, like I say, I think adaptability is the key. I think people need to be able to look at the realm of what they work in terms of their technical knowledge, and look at the further what is available to them to learn from. I mean, we've been talking recently about the amount of seminars that are available. There's been an amazing opportunity for people within the industry as technicians to be able to learn so much in such a short period of time, whereas we haven't necessarily had that before, to where we've been kind of, right, I'm going to learn this, but then I'm on a job that's going to take me 3 weeks, so then I'll learn this one next time. So we're in an amazing period in which we can take in so much information, and I think that from the side of how it goes forwards, I think that for sure, obviously, technicians we're in desperate need of getting technicians back into work. That's without a doubt. There's a huge part of our industry that sits at the moment sat at home doing amazing amounts of webinars and seminars and whatever else. Their knowledge is bigger and better now than it ever has been in the past. And I think as soon as we're in a position to be able to put that down onto a real event, the sooner the better, really.
We have another question, and I ask you because I don't have any direct information except what is officially communicated by the government. Any thoughts on how the expo will be affected by this crisis, except being 1 year later? That's already like a big effect. We received this question. Do you have any idea about it? And do you think that Expo might be the platform where a new way of conducting events in person, in presence, so we are away from the virtual thing, but events in person will be managed differently? Like how to manage a queue without gathering 200 people in a line, and this kind of things. I mean, honestly speaking, UAE loves to be recognized as a thinking forward country. So do we expect something important on that side?
Can I just pick up that thing from Andrea? Funnily enough, last week I made a level 5 diploma in major events, managing and planning and managing major events. And part of it was where people from Expo were involved. So basically, what Expo has not only changed from the date, they're now basically changing the whole people movement, etc., etc. But this will be parallel. So they will still keep the initial idea into the pocket. The other problem that most of the people see with the change is all of these pavilions, they have been designed 3, 4, 5 years ago. All the presentation is being ready to run from this October onwards. the problem that we will see is they're ready, most of the pavilions. So they have to change the whole content to and layouts, etc., to actually be compliant with any change for the COVID measurements. So we only can hope that by next year, there needs to be a kind of a deadline where they have to either change everything into COVID, but then there is no way that there's a change back into the old normal from a certain day. And this is where I think at the moment Expo is going to discuss internally and with their consultants and with the authorities how they can manage these, because there is certain expectations from the exhibitors as well. So imagine the countries, how much money they pay for building the pavilions, sending people, etc., etc. So these Expo presentations from the different countries, these are not companies, countries. Yeah, so they put a lot of government money in there, and they cannot just like last minute cancel or something. So there are certain rules and regulations that have to be followed, because if you sign up, it's a little bit like Formula One or something. You sign up, you sign a paper, and that's legally binding. So there's a lot of legal implications that needs to be looked after as well. So Expo, yes, it will be affected, yes, but with more work for now. So we can only hope that all the work they are doing right now will be obsolete by October next year.
Andrea, sorry if I can just jump in. Sorry if I can just jump in on that and just sort of touch upon the answer to what Mark was discussing and also what Stefan was. How to get the technicians involved. I mean, one thing that if we do go down this hybrid route, which we sort of all seem to believe is most likely right now, you're going to find that you obviously need the technicians on the main site, as we've had traditionally. But now, if it's a serious event and they really want to make sure that it's a smooth operating content and everything else, you're going to find you're going to have technicians on multiple sites, even if it's just to get the remote speakers, that they're comfortable with the equipment. You can't suddenly expect some of these people to suddenly just figure it all out for themselves. I mean, when this all started, everyone went on Zoom, and if it sounded a bit rubbish, great, but it was something we were all excited and it was superb. Slowly, it's got to get better and better. Sorry, whichever codec of your choice, not just Zoom. It's an open market. They just seem to be jumping ahead of the game. But as it gets more semi-permanent, we've got to do these things better. We can't just bumble through the way it has been in the past. So maybe you find that you've got smaller groups of technicians, but in multiple locations working towards one event. Now, whether that's for the bigger companies who've got offices around the world, or whether it is more, collaboration between all these smaller companies to say, we've got a big event here, but we know that there's a speaker from your region. Do you have a virtual studio in your warehouse, which we see springing up all around the world at the moment as people try and find new ways to survive, basically, not even make loads of money, but just to get through the day-to-day right now. On Stefan's point about the expo, yes, it's going to go ahead, and as you said in your comment beforehand, it's UAE in particular, Dubai especially, it lives for that challenge. I mean, let's be honest, why a lot of people are in the events industry here, because we get to do stuff that's a lot more interesting, exciting than we might get to do back home. It's a very fun place to be for an industry like the event industry. There's plenty of opportunities, and so I'm sure Dubai will try and turn this into as much of a plus as possible and look for the silver lining as opposed to just the clouds. Yes, all those countries have spent so much money, but they also want to show how they're coping, because if the whole point of the expo, the World Fair, as it used to be, is you launched what you hope would be a revolutionary product and make effectively your country great and ideally rich. So I'm sure there will be people who will be pitching or tweaking their existing message to how have we coped and what's the way forward. So it's certainly not going to be what it was envisaged to be. What was it, 4 or 5 years ago when Dubai was awarded the contract? But I think it could still be a great event. But again, it all depends on what happens in the next 2 or 3 months as the world opens back up again, and how we deal with this. We all rush towards normality. Hopefully we won't just shoot ourselves in the foot and set ourselves back another 6 months.
On the side of my screen, I am seeing some questions, and some of them are kind of $1 million question, but I think I have one that is $10 million question. So I will ask you this one specifically. It's coming from Mark, and he's asking, do you believe the events industry has the capability to stay strong together when the restrictions are relaxed and keep event budgets similar, or will there be too much temptation for some to slash prices despite the risk of permanent market devaluation? Probably a little more than $10 million.
It's the key question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being a key question, I will start to shape an answer. I see and I saw things in this month that I didn't expect. In Italy and in UAE, in South Africa, in different places, I saw the industry recognizing itself as a group of people with common interests. So much more than 1 year ago, my personal answer would be perhaps there is a possibility that I wouldn't have seen 1 year ago. But I leave answer to the experts. So who's gonna embrace the challenge first?
I'm gonna say something very, very controversial, and some people will hate me for that. Some will love me for that, for speaking the truth. This industry is full of egos. If you don't have an ego in this industry, you basically cannot make it to the top of the mountain. Why? Is because there's a lot of people who have a similar thing, and you need to fight your way through, and you need to be clever. And the problem is here that most of the people think they are more clever than the others. There has never been in none of the countries kind of a union thing. Whatever they have in America, that's not a proper union, that's something else. But this industry cannot speak with one voice because everyone has a different opinion, and they're right to have a different opinion. However, coming back from this, going into the financial thing, what we're going to see is we have deflection of people from the industry. Many people in like 6 months' time, we will lose a third, my prediction, third of the workforce. Our workforce in the events industry was already strained. We couldn't find new people, or good new people who have the passion, want to be trained, etc., etc. So if we are losing 1/3 of the people, that means the price needs to be right for the people to still work in this industry. Because this is an eye opener for many people. To not work in the events industry anymore. It's long hours and it's less money than anyone else in the other industries are working. People now realizing that. So we're going to lose people. That means we have to pay the people correctly. And there is people in the UK that I know, they have raised their prices in the middle of the COVID crisis by 25%. They say because we will have less job next year. That means we have to do our same money because otherwise we will not survive. We have to do the same money with less jobs. I have spoken to people in Germany and they have said, okay, it's on us. Finally, we have the chance, basically, to do what we should have done many years ago. We should raise now our prices from 200 euros a day for a freelance audio technician to like 450 or even 600. So the person can properly be insured, can properly live, etc., etc. So there is ways in this crisis to actually say and wake up and say, yes, we should do that. And it's correct. You can discount material, but whoever gives us discount on human workforce is on the wrong footpath for me. If you discount a human workforce, you devaluate your people. You're not making any money with them for their education. And I thought we have passed this long time. But sure, you will have the odd company going in, I'll do this for 15,000 dirhams or whatsoever. Yeah. But coming together and saying, okay, we're now making a price list for the whole of the UAE, I think that doesn't really work. But if people, and especially the owners of the company, are a little bit clever and acting clever, they will basically reevaluate their pricing structure and will definitely charge more for labor. And this is what it should be. Also, as I said, with material, with stocks, AV stocks, people have in the warehouses, pretty much a gamble, and it's down to the companies how much they want to devaluate their own equipment.
Any other consideration?
Sorry if I can jump in. I mean, I think that's the issue. It can go either of those scenarios that Stefan or Mark's question originally and then Stefan's discussed. I don't think are ideal for the industry. If everyone suddenly is slashing the prices because hey, something's better than nothing, it's a slippery slope and it's difficult to get out of that until a load of companies find they no longer can, and then you do have this culling of the herd mentality, which no one wants to see. That's certainly the last thing we want. On the flip side of that is if everyone's suddenly trying to double or triple prices because we lost all of March, April, May, so we've got to make the money that would have seen us through the summer. So therefore, September, October, November, we're really going to smash our prices up and hope we get a couple of really big ones. Again, I think it's a bit of a short-term solution, but that's not for me to say. That's for the rental companies, the event organizers, the venues to decide their own pricing models, and the freelancers who make all these things happen. Inevitably, something like this will change industries. I mean, we've seen it, not just the events industry, every industry. I mean, we look at what's happening in the airline industry here, which is a massive part of the UAE and particularly Dubai's economy. If that gets hit so hard, and events are reliant on that industry to bring people here and for the big bun fights and the MICE events and so on and so forth. If they can't come, what's going to happen? Again, is there an opportunity to if Dubai gets back to a safe place and promotes itself as such, saying, come here to hold your events because we know you'll be safe and it's a controlled environment. Is that a small opportunity? I hope so. But it's we will see people falling by the wayside, I'm afraid. I think that's kind of inevitable. You look at the music industry, a few years ago, who would ever have thought that people would stop buying the albums or CDs and stuff, and suddenly the whole industry changed. But you know what? It's still going. It's not died. It's just evolved, pivoted, whatever that term is. So I think that is going to happen in the events industry. It's just how we hopefully do it with a conscience and make it a better industry going forward, or maybe that's just being naive and wishful thinking. I don't know.
I agree with Antony in terms of one of the things that has been very positive during this whole period is the amount of discussion that is being had by people that didn't necessarily talk about these things before, because there's been a number of seminars that are talking about kind of very similar things, and they're bringing people in from very different backgrounds who are all kind of putting themselves across with a very positive outlook on how they want to go forward and how it's a thing within the industry. I think the proof is in the pudding at the end of the day is that, like, after the back end of these discussions and when people have made it quite clear that these things need to happen and that we need to work out how we're going to support the market in terms of how companies are going to price and how events are going to be priced, is what happens when we eventually get to that point. Is that we all know where it needs to be. Companies know where they need to be, and I hope that it becomes a point in which the companies are there and they believe that what they've said and is the way to go forward, and that is how it goes. But like I say, proof is in the pudding.
Before we close it, I'm just receiving some questions. Before we close the discussion, we've been talking about moving into new normal, moving forward to the normal that will be in future. And again, I ask you a question with no answer. I just want to raise a point. We are, I think, as an industry, the excellence in problem solving. I've been touring for about 15 years, and I don't remember a night where we the show didn't happen because of technical issues, except perhaps a couple of really big disasters. But other than that, we've been able to put the show together every night, no matter the conditions. No helpers, rain, extreme heat, extreme cold. We've been going on and on and on, no matter what. And I think that this is the key for the event industry to live this time. We need to put this ability in that we always had in the day-to-day business into the longer term. And on this side, I don't see us as an industry. I don't think we have been very good at it. But as you mentioned, this time has been a stop, and a lot of new connection, virtual connection, non-virtual connections, doesn't really matter at this point. New connections happened, and new people got in touch. So my question, with no answer for you three, is how much we will be capable of learning and moving forward to apply problem solving on a bigger scale, because we are not prepared for the future. We don't know, and this event proved that we couldn't be prepared for it. We had no clue it was coming, but it arrived, and most likely in the future it's going to be the same. So how our problem solving skills can expand on a bigger scale to keep the event industry alive no matter what, to have our shows happening no matter what, because in any way this is what human nature leads to. I mean, we have always had gatherings since the beginning of humanity, so we'll keep gathering somehow, maybe in different ways, maybe in different organizations, but we'll keep sticking together. How do you see the event industry solving the new problems to stick together again safely, as safe as possible? Oh, there is no one volunteering? Okay, I'll ask from Antony. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I think it goes back to the key of what I was saying in terms of the technicians earlier, which is, I mean, we work in an event that is hugely adaptable, in an industry, that is hugely adaptable. Everybody that is in this industry, as you've said, we're problem solvers. We look at things and we come up with sticking something together with gaffer tape because it's the only way it's going to work. But the fact is that maybe that is what's going to happen. We're going to be in a position where things change on a day-to-day basis. Things open more on a day-to-day basis, and our adaptability as an industry has to be to not necessarily see ahead of it, because I don't think we're going to have an opportunity to see ahead. You only have to look at America and a couple of other places now where the cases have flown up again. But we need to be in a position where once the decision's made, we are quick and ready to adapt to that decision, so that we give ourselves the best opportunity to do what we do. I mean, the reason that many of us are still in this industry and why we're in this industry is because we're hugely proud of the industry that we work in. It's an exciting and it's an amazing industry to be part of. We do some ridiculous hours and we have some really stressful times, but in general, we're here because we're proud of what we do. That mixed with our adaptability means that we should be able to work in teams to be able to really kind of give ourselves an opportunity that if something changes, we're there to make sure that we are ready for that change and that we are able to provide an event that is adaptable to fit that change. And that may change. We may plan project manage, or we may plan something for 2-3 weeks, and then suddenly the government decides that this is going to change, and we need to be able to be adaptable to make sure that we are ready not to cancel the event, but to do it in an alternative way.
I hope that your answer helps also. Jax from South Africa was asking, what do you guys think would be the best angle to approach reopening? And I think you really hit the point. Being flexible, being elastic, being fast to adapt. Stefan?
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree, Andrea. It's the thing is, over the last couple of months, I was also sitting with some of my distributors in different countries, And some of them, they were lamenting, oh, it's not going to do this, not going to do this. And then actually I put them a way to success out, where I said, have you tried this? Have you ever thought about speaking to these guys, to these guys, to these guys? And suddenly they come back to me after like 2-3 months and saying, you know what, we did an extra sale that we haven't been banked on, because we approached the whole thing completely differently. And this is how you work. Just throw everything aboard. Not everything, obviously, but your how you approach things. Throw this aboard and pull in new thinking and reset your mind as well. So I think it's very, very important. I see a lot of people who still sitting after 3 or 4 months at home. Oh, I have done a health and safety course. I have done to level 1. Now, I'm still waiting until things are changing. You need to change. You need to change, not the industry around you. So you need to adopt. Everyone from us, as Andrea said, needs to be elastic and turn around and see where you can dock on. Find new peers, find new ideas, and find your niche. And also present yourself in a manner where you be an educated person and work with a company to reach to new shores.
Antony, do you have any final consideration to add?
No, I think it's nothing that anyone doesn't already know, and I don't want to make it sound like a self-help seminar, but it's everyone has to reevaluate where they were, and yes, when the times are good, we just roll with it and we just go down a certain path, and it just seems to be as if that will never change, and we never want it to because we're doing well. Those who aren't doing so well, they're the ones who've got to innovate all the time and struggle. It's the whole thing of a small company. When it starts off, it's a jackal. It's very nimble. It's taking small bites. As it gets bigger, it becomes a lion, and by the end, it's a hippopotamus, and it's stock. It's just going in a certain way, and that's it. And sometimes we need to have that, I guess, shock to make that change. I think as long as companies stick to what they are best at and strongest at, and collaborate more with each other, don't try and be everything to everybody. And we see this as a manufacturer. Yeah, certain parts of our line are sort of, we can't make enough of it right now because it suits the need right now. Other bits are suffering. The pro world. Let's be very honest about that. There's no reason to hide that. We know it will come back in the short term, though. Where do we concentrate our efforts? And I think it's the same for all the rental companies, the technicians, the directors, the producers, the freelancers. Find that niche that's working for you. And I know from speaking to several of them recently, they're finding those things. And it might only be a stopgap right now, and it might not be where they want it to get back to, but it's something. Something's better than nothing right now. You look at the interpreters. They might not like doing remote interpretation, but it's that or just watch more stuff on Netflix right now. So, make the most of it while you can, learn some new skills, get through and see where you get to, but keep an open mind. Don't try and necessarily fall back into the bad old ways that may have snuck in when it didn't really matter because you were so successful anyhow. That sounds really preachy. I apologize.
Absolutely correct.
Thank you very much.
Not at all.
And Andrea, can I just pick on Ranjan just sent a very interesting thought. It's not it's not the first coronavirus, and hopefully it's the last. But this could prepare us for such scenarios in the future. And Rajan is absolutely right. Who does not know now learn how to deal with it, they will have a really, really big problem if it happens again. So this is now really setting the root, learn, adapt, and actually build a cushion, and don't buy anything on or everything on loans and credits.
And before the time runs out, I'm just going to make one little reminder. Obviously, the initiative that we've got going. If anyone would like any details, then my LinkedIn is available, my Facebook's available, WhatsApp. Obviously, we were able to get help and support to over 200 people this week, which is absolutely incredible, but there's still more people out there. So if people would like to be able to get in touch, then please find me on any of the socials or WhatsApps or whatever. It can be, if you want to speak to Andrea or get in touch with me directly to get my details, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Great.
Just thought I'd wedge that in. Thank you,
We'll
mate.
be sharing your social media links to your social media on the thank you email for who participated, and
Perfect,
for who didn't register and attended on any other platform, you can reach out to me or to Shure Mia, and we'll definitely put you in touch with Mark and with this initiative. Other than that, I want to thank you all of you for your participation to answer some non-answerable question, and I really appreciate the effort of fantasy and that you put in this. And as a lesson, I will temporarily stop the Tech Talk. Next Tuesday there won't be another Tech Talk because I'm trying to develop a new format for this. So hold on for a couple of weeks, and we will come with something new and more synchronized with a new time. It's not emergency quarantine time anymore. And as a manufacturer, we really want to give some added value to your time and give you something new. So sorry for a little spot on myself. I shouldn't do it, but I've been running webinars on Tuesdays since the beginning of a lockdown, and it's the first time we stop it. So it's for a reason, and to come back better than this. If everything we did today will be available on Shure Mia YouTube channel. So thank you very much, and good luck to all our colleagues out there. And I hope, as I say always, I hope to see you soon for real.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Stay strong,
guys.
everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you very much, everyone.